Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second session today in the Manufacturing Materials Startup Week from Launch Dayton. Today, we are lucky to run a roundtable session with three founders and executives of early stage manufacturing and product-based companies. I'm going to give a real quick introduction to each of them, and then I'm going to pass the baton to them to let them give a little bit of their backgrounds and kind of how they came to where they're at currently within their startup. So first we have Battlesite Technologies. Nick Ripplinger is the founder and president of the company. It's a rapid technology commercialization firm focused on the warfighter, the first responder, and emergency management professionals. Nick is also a U.S. Army soldier in operations NCIOC. Nick is a best-selling author of Frontline Leadership, applying military strategies to everyday business and frontline leadership journal. He founded Frontline Leadership LLC, a leadership training and development company. As a service-disabled veteran, Nick dedicated his personal time, and resources to assist veterans in transition by leverage their military skills in the business world. Next, we have Ghostwave. Ghostwave is founded by Dean Zodi. Dean is a business-oriented global operations leader with an engineering background, delivering innovative solutions with measurable growth and profitability. Accomplished background in startups, cost reduction initiatives, and operational management in telecommunications, chemical, and consumer products. He has multiple disciplines, includes operations, supply chain, procurement, and logistics. He has strong database and analytical skills. And in 2016, he founded Ghostwave, commercializing patents from The Ohio State University. And finally, we have UB Here Inc. UB Here is led by John Baer, who's the Chief Executive Officer. He has extensive experience in electronics product design and development and manufacturing. Prior to joining UB Here, John was the founding executive director of the Center for Design and Manufacturing Excellence. Previously, he co-founded Pinnacle Data Systems, a full product lifecycle diversified integrated computer electronics systems company. It was listed on the NASDAQ exchange as PNS, and the company developed and sold over 500 different electronic products to various OEMs. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll do this in alphabetical order based off of your company's names. So, Nick, from Battlesite, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of your background and overview on how you came to be Battlesite.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Eric. So Battlesite, we founded it in 2017 with the sole purpose of commercializing some Air Force technology. We licensed those patents towards the end of 2017, got to revenue early 2018, and kind of grown from there. Since then, we filed a handful of our own patents and executed 4 or 5 other patent licenses from the Air Force.
Wonderful. Dean, you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself and Ghostwave?
Sure. I guess background for myself, my claim to fame was about 25, 30 years ago. I helped take fabric softener sheets off of rolls, like you see rolls of paper towels, and have them folded up. That was, something very unique for that period a long time ago. I have an engineering, physics, and MBA degree from Ohio State, and started Ghostwave in 2016 when I was doing some volunteer work for Rev1 Ventures, and my career at Nokia was coming to an end. I learned of some patents that were available from Ohio State for commercialization, and we founded Ghostwave. Out of the start, we took a little bit to get going. TVS funds, some other development opportunities, but it's finally coming together now. We're pretty consistent, have a good outlook, and that's the cliff notes.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Dean. And John, UB Here. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and the story of UB Here?
Sure. My background, basically, I spent the last 25 years building and manufacturing products for global OEMs and then doing support and product lifecycle for them. When I left CDME from Ohio State, getting that center up and running, I was approached by Rev1. UB Here was a technology that was licensed actually by Rev1 with a CEO and a management team to take the UB Here patented technology for asset tracking, geospatial location, and commercialize it. After about a 2.5 year try at that, the current CEO or the former CEO decided that this wasn't really down his track of expertise. So I was brought in to actually help productize and commercialize the product and get it to market. So for the last year and a half, I've been working on getting the products developed and designed, and been raising some money thanks to help of Eric and others around SBIRs, STTRs, and TVSFs. Now we're on the verge of raising our first round of significant capital.
Wonderful. Congratulations. So I thought we would run this panel in various segments, kind of hit on a little bit of some of the things that our audience may be interested in. One of the first things I'd like to kind of hit on is the motivation. What inspired you guys to found these companies? You in almost every case was a founder, and you guys are all the CEOs. What really made you want to be part of UB here, John? So we'll start with you.
Well, I guess I'm an entrepreneur at heart since I started my first business when I was in college, when I was a junior. I'm big on wealth creation. And the only way you're going to get wealth creation is if you're part owner of a business and you have basically the rewards at the end. So when UB Here was presented, it took me actually 3 months to figure out exactly the value proposition of the technology and how it could be implemented. So I actually view it as a wealth creation. We're looking for a significant raise. We're going to grow this business, then we're going to invest. So
wonderful. And I think, obviously, the generational wealth and the growth of the company are a lot of people's motivation. I think, Nick, you maybe had a different motivation in conjunction with that, or at least another motivation in conjunction with that. What really kind of got you to focus on Battlesite here?
Yeah, so I was definitely kind of like at a crossroads career-wise. I didn't really want to move to California or DC, kind of in my corporate jobs, to try and figure out what was next. And then when I had the opportunity presented to me for a product I would have been a customer for back in my time in Iraq and Afghanistan, kind of connected the dots, and we kind of lowered our heads and started running.
And again, I think that the motivation for you always seemed to be a little bit as much about helping that customer as it was about the growth of the company.
100%. And I think, I know there's a customer section coming up here, but our relationship with our customers is what's really grown our business, kind of along those same mindsets. My favorite question to ask them is, what sucks about your day-to-day jobs and how can we solve it?
That's wonderful. We espouse the merits of customer discovery, and that's obviously the case here. So Dean, you're kind of a little bit of a little bit of an anomaly here in the respect that you came from big business and then started a company, right? What was your motivation to do that? Why did you from this big corporate and lead this new startup?
I didn't take a leap. I was pushed.
So when you're pushed off the cliff, why didn't you look for another cliff? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I guess I was operations director for a facility in Romania, working for Nokia out of Finland. So the writing was on the wall of why should some guy in Dublin, Ohio, be managing this facility in Romania? So why did I do this? There's an opportunity to lead with parting gifts, and I think if you go back. For years, my wife was setting me up for this. She was CFO for then Tech Columbus, getting me involved with OTAF, getting me more involved with volunteer activities with Rev1. So she was kind of building this environment around me to make me more aware. And then I found out about the patents that were available, and it was after going through Lucent Technology, Scott's, the Dial Corp. It was nice to get out and do something that every day you kind of decide what you're going to do and how you're going to make it better.
And so to follow up with that, I mean, a lot of people believe that being an employee at a big company is safe, right? I mean, there's this misnomer that you're secure there, right? And as you said, you were pushed out. I've always believed that the most secure position is being your own boss. Right? Yeah. Was there fear in doing this? Taking this new startup when you've come from such a big background?
It was more the fear of I would have to go back to a real job again. So Yeah, I mean, certainly there's newness to it, the uncertainty of it, but there was more of the motivation of, I've done this corporate thing enough. I want to do something else, and I like it. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And so Nick, the same question for you as you transition out of the military. Was there a fear there? Was there excitement? What was your general feeling when you're standing battle site up?
Yeah, so I was already out of the military for a few years at that point. Kind of like Dean just said, is once you kind of get that taste, and there's the option of going back and working for somebody else, so you just find a way to make it work.
Yeah, and I think that is a critical, should be the motto of most entrepreneurs, right? Find a way to make it work, and that's certainly something that I've seen across the continuum for all of our entrepreneurs. Finding a way to make it work is kind of a specialty of yours, John, in the respect that you've done this before. You figured out how to develop different products for different customers. How has that experience enabled or made your growth of UB here a little bit more efficient?
Well, I'd say being an entrepreneur, you need to learn to work without a net, because you are the backup, you are the prime. So you first have to understand levels of stress when you're doing these projects and starting these businesses. I would say you need to get tempered quick, and you need to understand what's a real problem, what's not a real problem. So prior issues, UB here, first thing we had was, hey, we're not sure if this technology works, right? We better crack down on it real fast and get our designs. And we have to execute. So I think we're going through it. It's just you have to understand it's sometimes stressful, and prioritize your tasks.
Okay, it's a wonderful answer. What do you think the biggest fear of you is? For you?
Systems, it's all about the analytics. It's all about solving their problems. Will these large companies want to go in and set up systems inside facilities and hospitals? I'm not sure that's going to be their forte. So, create a services business that provides a service to the customers. And
Now, kind of where we are is, how do we stay relevant? How do we stay, in front of our customers? How do we keep that reputation of, hey, call up those battle site guys, they'll turn a prototype around in 48 hours and solve a problem. So it's more on, especially with everything going on in the world right now, we're traveling, 2-3 weeks, a month before all this happened, and we were right there in front of their face. So it's kind of, how do we still stay relevant when we're not, making those touch points?
And so on that same vein, since you've been through this experience relatively recently, what are two pieces of advice you might be able to give our audience, to save them from some of the early hurdles that you encountered?
Yeah, I think just having something of value that's going to improve their lives. Like, we never have to sell our product, right? We just show it to them, and they tell us how they're going to use it, and then they place a purchase order. It's kind of nice. But that wouldn't be possible if our product wasn't super intuitive and a value to the customers. And then I think the other one is just, as the entrepreneur, take a deep look at yourself and realize what you're good at, what you suck at, and then build a team around you that, fill in those holes that what you suck at.
Listen, unfortunately, I think, and it's wonderful advice. I think that unfortunately for most of us, when we start out, we are everything, right? You were everything.
100%.
Nick, you were the CEO and the janitor, so you better be at least a little bit good at everything.
Yeah, but we definitely had, or at least I had on my whiteboard back when BattleSite was one person, an idea, and a laptop of, first hire, second hire, and trying to build out that team and, leveraging friends and people that are willing to come work for a case of beer and a pizza for a weekend.
So Dean, did you have any, partners or support partners or programs that assisted you getting Ghostwave up and going? I mean, this is usually a one-man show or one-woman show right out of the gate. But very quickly we need to develop partners, right? Did you have any particular ones that you ran through?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly Ohio State was a big supporter. Dr. Walton, the inventor of the patents, supported us. He introduced me to Dr. Villarroel. And out of the gate, we were going after Ohio Development TVSF funds. And once that was landed, Ohio State CDME, again, back to Ohio State, which, helped grow and make that minimum viable product. And, like you said, that first hire is very important. Ghostwave went as long as they could, really, without making that first hire and outsourcing as much as they could. And then when we got an OFRN contract, we brought on more partners like Converge Technologies that helped us make that first product for us.
And how long did you go from starting the company until you hired your first non-you employee?
If we leave out part-time employees and interns, we went almost 4 years.
Wow. And
Yeah.
Nick, the same question to you. I mean, how long were you up and going? What was just you?
Probably about a year.
Okay. And
yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, did you partner out or contract any of your work out early on?
Yeah, 100%. We were all CAD was outsourced, initial prototypes 3D printed. I was making chemistry in my kitchen until we kind of, grew into what we are today.
Your chemistry in your kitchen reminds me of one of John Bear's stories about soldering boards in his kitchen. John, let me ask you, what funding mechanisms did you employ to get started? It seems like UB here has a lot of customer or non-dilutive capital, but maybe some investment too. You were talking about. So, what did you do to get funded to get up and going?
Well, fortunately, Rev One participated early, and we got basically an investment from them for about $125,000, and then we were granted that TVSF for $100,000. So, as you know, we've obviously gone now working on that SBIR for the Air Force, but with a lot of non-dilutive capital got us to where we are without taking a lot of dilution hits, but it's really helped us forward.
It seems like all three of you gentlemen have had lots of non-dilutive capital. What are your lessons learned for some of these startups? I mean, is it worthwhile pursuing that, or do you recommend going the typical investment route? We'll start with you, John, since you're on.
Well, I always believe the first route is what can you afford, what can you take, what can you risk, and then family and friend first, and then go out from there.
Roger that.
It's the cheapest investment you can get. And it's relatively safe.
How about you? Yep.
Now,
sorry, John.
Once you start getting investments from shareholders, it's like taking a company public. You now have shareholders.
I like the way you're shaking your head when you say that. It's a good and a bad thing, right? So Dean, to you, I mean, it seems like you haven't taken very much equity capital at this point either. What do you recommend for our startups?
I remember back in 2017, there was a SBIR roadshow that came in to Ohio State, and Bill Harrison was up front. He was talking about grants, and I've been very fortunate that we have $150,000 of real investment that's dilutive with Rev One Ventures and Flash Charts up in Cleveland. But Bill Harrison was up front, and he was talking about grants, about how grants were non-dilutive. And he goes, the key to your grants is ATFQ. And everybody looked around. And he goes, "Answer the question."
I like how you left the F out. We appreciate that.
Yeah, but it was so direct. And it's like, the light bulb went on. He's like, just no, that's what you need to do when you're writing your grants.
Wonderful. And then Nick, you're a little further along in terms of actual manufacturing a product. That's got to be expensive. Can you give us any insight into that, and how was it setting up a manufacturing line here in the U.S. versus overseas?
Yeah, so real quick on the startup funding, like never take outside money is my kind of philosophy on that.
You guys are all bootstrappers, all three of you.
Yeah, so like dump all my personal savings in and hope for the best. But on the manufacturing side of things, it is definitely not cheap standing up a line. So our product, the first product that we put into production was Craytac, which is a paraffin-based crayon. So we actually went up to upstate New York and bought a candle manufacturer for pennies on the dollar. Guys cashing out wanted to sell off all the assets, so we bought that, brought it back down to Dayton, and went to town figuring out a lot of welding and cutting and retrofitting an Estee Lauder candle manufacturing line for crayons for the military. So there's definitely cheap ways to do it. I've never stood up anything outside of the U.S., kind of with my background being mostly defense. So we knew Barry Act was going to be a constraint and that we had to find U.S.-based suppliers and all our supply chain, plus the manufacturing aspect and U.S. citizens and all that other fun stuff.
And you haven't taken an investment at all yet, Nick?
No.
Wow. That's very, very impressive given where you're at.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And so Dean and John together, I think you guys have significant amounts of overseas experience. What are your thoughts on manufacturing product overseas versus in the U.S.? And we'll start with John.
Yeah, I've always, since my first company was in Ohio, my approach was we were very I don't know, it's not so much material focused from a pennies on the dollar type assembly. We were pretty expensive, high-end equipment and systems for OEMs. So I preferred to build everything in the U.S., especially with some of the stuff that we're doing for the British Aerospace and Boeing and Lockheed Martin, who were primes in the military. But I tell you, the capabilities of the U.S. manufacturers, the skill set, I really prefer to have the skill set here in the U.S. Rather than trying to work through mediators and other facilities that you don't even know where they are. So.
Oh, wonderful. And then Dean, you have some experience manufacturing overseas. Where do you see the cost? There used to be a huge cost gap between manufacturing electronics, especially in the U.S. and versus overseas. Do you see that coming down at all, Dean?
Geez, that's a great question. Yeah, I do see it coming down more, and the reason being, once you get automated, the labor that's involved with that becomes such a small piece of the pie for your total cost. The same, board-mounted amplifier costs the same in Columbus as it does in Thailand. So those components, then you just look at a total cost of ownership of that. And if you're in, and I hate to group things by country, if you're in specific countries, you're going to get quality reports. You're going to know what's going on by serial number, what parts are on which board, and the details phenomenal. And that can be, costs that you haven't even thought of that you're saving because you know that information. Then there's other regions that don't give you that type of information. And when you look at the cost to ship it back, usually air freight for electronics, quality issues, you can make an argument that it's cheaper and you're going to get better quality out of it. So that's a open-ended question. I don't think I specifically answered it, but it's really regional specific in my mind.
And I think you answered it to my thinking, my line of thought as well, in the respect that I've seen automation closing that gap, right? Mm-hmm. With automation, it's almost as cost effective to manufacture here in the U.S., especially given the amount of automation that goes into the assembly of your product. The closer that gap becomes, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And so let's jump ahead a little bit here. Now that we've got a little bit of background on you guys, talk a little bit about maybe customer discovery. Like how did you guys find your customers? What are some of the horror stories associated with your startup? And so since we have you on, Dean, we'll start with yours. We kind of all heard these. I come into the market without a product. I built it, but nobody came. Why are you different?
Why are we different? I guess, when you're looking at, creating a product without a customer, how we've gone from OFRN contracts to SBR, STTR, we're almost having that customer research already done for it. The OFRN says, here's topics the Air Force wants, or the SBIR, STTR, no, the Army wants this. So you're getting non-dilutive funding for DOD, and if you stick with the Department of Defense, you have your customer. Right? And so it's almost like, in the way the Air Force is going now, is here's what we want, find other people that want the same thing. It really, I think, is minimizing the risk of customer discovery because of going to those non-dilutive grant opportunities.
Wonderful.
Does that make sense?
It does. Okay. And so John, I'm going to ask you. I mean, there are lots of real-time location tracking systems out there, RTLS systems, I guess they call them. How do you see you be here, being differentiated in that geospatial analytics market, and how are you going to outcompete these companies?
Well, I think the first thing is, when you're a small business, you need to have a good base of partners, right? Support partners that are in deep with some of your customers, your future customers, that understand their problems. So once you get deep inside their problems and you're working with partners that are supporting you, your customers, actually, this is kind of how I sold my entire life, is working with partners and helping make that customer a hero and successful. Once you've done that, they'll continue to work with you through bad times, good times. I think it's really our flexibility in modifying this technology and the solutions for our customers' applications. Because I've seen so many applications over the last year and a half where everybody has a different challenge, right? Whether it's battery life, it's accuracy, it's the data, it's HIPAA. You have to be very flexible, and you have to be nimble as can be to make these customers heroes.
Wonderful. And I think that, again, you guys keep hitting on a central theme that we try to espouse to all the startups that we support, which is
So that's definitely kind of breaks down a huge language barrier and makes our life a lot easier on the product development side of things. And then how do you transition that, military specific product into the commercial market? And we're definitely still trying to figure that out. Having a lot of success with, first responders because they're very similar mission sets, just different parts of the world. But then how do we, get Eric Wagner to visible Craytac for his kids, so then go out and vandalize the streets.
And that's what I've been waiting. That's what I've been waiting for, Nick. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, a proposal's going in this week for that, for the funding for it at least. But we've kind of proven it out, and so that's the plan for 2020 is to get that one across.
That's fantastic, and I will obviously be one of the first customers. My 15-year-old will eat it up, so and he'll do exactly what you just said, and hopefully it's biodegradable and washes away so that I don't get in too much trouble.
It is.
So I assume that was going to be the case. So when we think a little bit deeper on this customer discovery process, there's actually programs out there to help facilitate this, and I know that at least two of you, and I think all three of you have been through some form of I-Corps in one way or the other. But I'm going to ask you, Dean, because I know John was a mentor on the program, and I think Nikki went through the Air Force version of it. But Dean, you went through an I-Corps program at Ohio State. What was that like for you?
I thought it was brutal. It was a requirement for OFRN. It was trying to get your team together to ask questions to potential customers that weren't leading questions, and to me it was very time consuming and very tough. However, when you're done with it, you have a certain sense of confidence that you're doing the right thing. Like, yeah, we can put this in, ask for money, and make sure that we're not going down the wrong road with this application. So it's like taking a hard class in college. You don't want to, but when you're finally done with it, it's like, yeah, I got that one done.
And so
quantum physics, by the way.
Was iCore or quantum physics harder? Which one?
Michael Camp and yourself, it was like, oh, there's a structure, there's a process. You check these boxes, you go through this. Talking to 100 customers, I like talking to customers. The issue is some of the faculty members don't like talking to customers, and they had the same response as Dean. This is really hard. I don't know. I want to tell them what I have. I want to go out and just let them know how I'm going to solve the problems versus not leading them. So I actually really enjoyed it. And then at the end, just like Dean's experience, the faculty members we were working with, one of them was Dean's, what was his name? Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name now. But anyhow, at the end, they were like, yeah, this was really helpful. This really helps focus my technology development. And it was great for everybody.
And I think iCore teaches everybody who's an entrepreneur to go what Nick said, which is how to be flexible, right? Your customer is going to tell you what they want. Your customer is going to demand that value proposition from your products, and it's up to you to be flexible enough to meet those. I think we've seen the biggest failures come from startups that are so ingrained in their technologies that they're unwilling to change to adapt to a customer need or value proposition. So these are all very sound pieces of advice for our startups. And so let's kind of talk a little bit about, that customer value proposition and pricing methodology. And maybe Nick, we'll start with you. Like, how do you determine what your value is to that customer? And then how do you price your products accordingly?
Yeah, so great question. I wish it was like super easy. You do this formula in Excel and it tells you how much to sell it for, but it doesn't work that way. And I think it all comes back to kind of that last question you were asking about, is engagement with your customer. So when we first launched Craytac, it was at a SOCOM technical evaluation event. And we learned two big things about that. One was our applicator sucked, that there was value in the technology, but the way we formed was not good. And we also figured out what they'd be willing to pay for it. So it's kind of the two big things we went out there. So our customers set our pricing for us on Craytac. All right, we had a number in our mind based off cost and everything, but it really all comes down to willingness to pay.
And that willingness to pay is where you set your price point then.
Yep, exactly. And we set it higher than we initially thought because we engaged the customers and we found out the value of it to them. And, a lot of the logistics and behind the scenes stuff, that was actual cost reduction. So it made more sense to pay a little more to remove significant amounts of cost.
And so that value pricing, we'll call it, is something that a lot of companies overlook. They tend to try to price their products to the cheapest possible price to manufacture and still make money, where they could be capturing some additional value based off the customer. And so John, maybe you can talk a little bit about that for UB here. It seems like you could price your products competitively, like hyper competitively against other solutions out there, or you could look for value-added solution capabilities within them. Talk a little bit about your pricing methodology.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to win this on cost plus, right? If we're going cost plus, it's not going to be a profitable business. We need to add value to our customers. They do have a price point in their mind. They do have a value proposition they're looking for. Once we figure those out and we can help, as I said, make them heroes, it's not cost plus anymore. We're providing a valuable service to them, whether it's in the software, the analytics, the asset recovery, asset prevention of loss. They're willing to pay a premium for the product because we're saving them money. And that's, I think, biggest thing I've done in the past is you're either making people money or saving them money. Which one is it? And once you figure that out, you can determine where the value pricing is.
And when you go back to that whole I-Core methodology, you're increasing the gains or decreasing the pains, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is for any person who's bringing a new product into the market. Those are the two number one things associated with customer discovery: increase their gains or decrease their pains. And so Dean, to your point, your product here, I understand there's a high value aspect of it for the DoD, but you're going to ultimately potentially push into autonomy in automotive, where margins are ridiculously low, right? How do you see that transition happening, or do you?
The automotive industry is so slow. I believe that if we get that opportunity, we're going to have 7 years to bring down to do what we need to do to get to a reasonable point. That's how slow a product now that if you chose for automotive takes to get in. But back to, I think, kind of what John was saying, with our different applications, though, there are people in the market doing competitive products that the price is just outrageous. So, it's not going to be a cost plus basis. We're going to, people are providing the service. Here's Ghostwave version of that give you some added value, and, we'll price it at the market price. It's kind of echoing or parroting back what John said. There's a need out there for more expensive products with higher margins. We'll get that set and established first before we pursue the commodity market.
Wonderful. And so I appreciate all your advice from all of our panelists. We're going to stop here just for a second and open up the floor for Q&A and see if anybody wants to type a question into the chat room for any of our participants. We'll give that about a minute or two, and then we'll pick up on questioning if we don't get too much. So if you guys just want to hold tight 1 second. Go ahead, Dean.
There's nobody on the call, by the way.
The video portion through Microsoft Teams, which only the panelists can participate in, and then the rest is live streamed out.
All right, got it.
And so with our audience, if we have an audience, and I know we do because somebody actually questioned about the audio earlier, they were having some audio issues with one of our panelists. We definitely have an audience, but we're going to go ahead and ask them to put any of the Q&A in that they have into the box, Socio. And then we'll ask them, but we're going to go ahead and continue with our panelists for the remaining time here while we're waiting for any of that Q&A. So, all right. So we talked, gentlemen, about value proposition, customer discovery. We're kind of really at this go-to-market strategy, right? And so we'll start with I guess you're already there. You already have your manufacturing line up and going. So we'll start with John in this respect. What are your go-to-market plans for UB here? Like, where are your first channels at? How are you going to get there?
Yeah, we had that all figured out before February of this year.
COVID.
Before COVID hit, and all of our customers basically retrenched and shut down. So our go-to-market strategy was based off of partners, introductions to customers in the medical, industrial, manufacturing spaces that had real challenges that needed addressed. So we were basically using the voice of the customer to determine how we were going to go to market. And once we got one demo or opportunity to present or to show that capabilities, like we had a local shoe retailer actually have us install in 3 of their stores here in Columbus to analyze their display booths, usage and investment. And from that, we built the value proposition for that retail market. And we're doing the same with the hospital, same with the manufacturing, same with the commercial side. So we're building value propositions so that we can then scale that, right? Because once you know the problem each one of them's having, let's say the hospital systems, then you can go in and market to the larger network, and then you have reference selling, right? Because a lot of these communities all talk to each other.
And so now that you have that plan, where are you going to manufacture? Is it in the U.S. or you looking at overseas? What are you doing?
We're going to manufacture in the U.S.
Wonderful. And so Dean, I'm going to ask you a kind of a similar question here. For you though, you seem to be a relatively specialized technology. What is your sales strategy, and do you have any guidance on for our startups here on how to implement a sales strategy for something that has a unique feature set associated with it?
Yeah. So for Ghostwave, we've kind of fallen into that we're supplying a component of a bigger system, whether it be for protection, monitoring of systems, or for collision avoidance. So our goal is to work at this point, again, we're a lot with Department of Defense and DoD primes. We want to become, here's the sensor you need for this complete system, and use the DoD primes as our channel into the final customer.
Wonderful. And so gentlemen, I'm gonna shift focus here a little tiny bit to a little bit more of the fun stuff, just to wrap up. We have about 4 minutes left. Since we have you on, Dean, what is it you do for fun outside of work?
I have bees.
Or do you do anything outside of work?
I have bees. I am a beekeeper.
Dean is a beekeeper, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're using your technology to help beekeepers too.
Yeah. So last year we did receive a Department of Agriculture grant. And with that, we put together a proposal that said the speed of honeybee wings could be an indicator of the health of the hive to provide early warning of colony collapse, or there's an infestation of mites and that the beekeeper needs to do something about it. So we had interns running around Cleveland and Central Ohio last year, measuring the speed of honeybees as they entered the hive. And we're still waiting to hear back from phase 2 on that. So I'm not quite sure where we stand, if we're going to continue our monitoring of wing speed or not.
It's pretty cool when your product can be used by your kids, right? And like I said with Nick's, whenever that crayon comes out and my kid can go out and vandalize something, that's going to be fantastic. And so Nick, we're going to actually roll back here a little bit. We did have a Q&A. This question was for you. The audience member wanted to know, how did you know that the candle production line would work for your product?
We didn't.
I assume that was going to be the answer.
That's the real answer, right? It's like everything else. It was a gamble that, we're probably using, 30, maybe 40% of it right now. We've trashed, 50% of it, and we've modified the other 10% to make it work for our needs.
And so that was obviously a cost analysis that you did, the risk reward paradigm here. You got it cheap enough that it was worth the shot. Is that the case, or what was the thinking there?
Yeah, I figured we could probably scrap it for half the cost, and it'd be a good learning lesson if it didn't work out. But when you're talking tracks, you're going to need some form of track that you could probably modify to get that to work. The melting tanks were kind of a big gamble, but really they're giant water heaters. If they heat up, they'll probably melt our wax. So it was somewhat de-risked, but at the end of the day, we never knew if it was actually going to work for us or not.
And I think that the idea of calculated risk is paramount to all entrepreneurs, right?
Absolutely.
Yep. And so now that we have you on, Nick, what do you do for fun outside of work? What's your work-life balance look like, if anything?
Yeah. So boating with the family, skiing in the winter. And I've got 2 little nerds that are 8 and 6, so try to spend as much time with them as possible. But when you're phone, you're always connected, so it's not uncommon to have to answer calls or texts whenever they come in.
And that seems to be the case. I mean, you're on 24/7, but I think we're all trying to find that work-life balance. John, it seems like you're pretty active in sports. What do you do outside of work?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of building future leaders, and especially with the mentor or the interns that we have. I think especially engineers that have potential to be the future leaders. They have the skill sets. I do a lot of coaching. I'm actually an athletic director for one of the local schools. It's about teaching the kids. It's about building that character. And sports is a great way to do that. Teach competitiveness, teach teamwork, teach commitment. So I coach a lot.
I'm a big fan of the student athlete. I think that you do get a lot of life lessons out of sports that you don't get out of academia, as well. So we're going to wrap up here, and I'm going to ask everybody the exact same question, and hopefully you have some different answers here. But what's the best advice you can give one of these entrepreneurs looking to start their own companies? Right off the top of your head. We'll start with you, John, since you're on.
Yeah. First thing is don't make decisions paralysis by analysis. If you need to make decisions, get about 70% there and go. You'll figure out the rest.
I think that is something that we've learned quite a bit, you and I, on our time together. That if you're not moving forward, you're not moving at all, right?
That's right.
And so how about you, Nick?
Oh yeah, so John stole mine. I was gonna say just actually do it. Right, you gotta start somewhere and start making progress. But I think the other part would be, focus on your customer and your team. And trust me, I know how it's like to be resource strapped and not be able to invest in either one of those. But have that plan in place so the second that you can, you make those investments.
So it seems like for all of our panelists, we're gonna buy you guys Nikes and just do it, right?
Exactly.
So Dean, what about you? We're gonna let you wrap us up here. What's your advice for our startup companies?
At least for Ghostwave, it takes longer than you think, and especially if you're working with a university.
And I think that has been something I've seen time and time again. No matter whether you're working with the university or not, it's going to take longer and it's going to cost more than you typically think. So unless you're the biggest pessimist I've ever met, which most entrepreneurs aren't, it's going to take longer and cost more than you think it is, because we're all optimists at heart, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, gentlemen, I thank you very much for being part of Startup Week. This has been a great panel. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. If anybody else has any questions, they have the contact information for our speakers in the session information. So thank you guys very much. You have a great day.
Thanks.
See ya.
See y'all.